Ary Rosenbaum here with another episode of that 401k podcast. And of course, this week's episode, we're going to talk to this is about the one with the turd in the punch bowl. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But of course, first things first, events coming up, hopefully, April 17th in Houston. Unless Major League Baseball decides to further postpone the season, we'll obviously let you know if we have to reschedule it. St. Louis, that 401k conference will emanate from Busch Stadium in St. Louis on May the 8th and on June the 5th, Target Field, Minneapolis. Go to that 401ksite.com for further information. The Houston event, we booked J.R. Richard, which I'm very, very excited about. And of course, I record this episode a week in advance. So as I record this, the world has been turned upside down by this little thing called the coronavirus. We've got no sports events to look forward to. Life has changed. Going to Costco is feel like like a war or a war story. Life has certainly changed. Luckily, we were able to get that 401k National Conference off. Attendance obviously impacted certainly quite a bit by that coronavirus, but we had a great event. It was very, very challenging, but, attendees had a good time, got some insight on the retirement plan industry. Ron Duguay was there on the first day. We had Goose Gossage on the second day, both fine guests. When it comes to the events, I've done around 15 so far, if we count this one as 2 days. And I have to say, Goose is probably one of my favorite guests, probably top 2 or 3. He's, as opposed to Steve Garvey, who was a fantastic guest, Goose Gossage, along with, let's say, Dwight Gooden, were idols of mine. I mean, I love these guys when I was a kid. Goose, when I booked him, I asked my buddy Larry Davis, who books all the athlete appearances, I asked for Goose Gossage if he was available. Because I know Goose, and I know how, open and honest he is, and that probably is another reason why this episode is the turd in the punch bowl, and we'll get to the second reason why as well. And, he was fantastic. And Ron Duguay as well. Both guys... it's funny at the events in Florida, both, New York mainstays came to prominence in the 70s, both great guys and very, very open and honest. Between Ron Duguay and his conquests back in the days, the Studio 54 days that he's revealing on a podcast with New York Post, and Goose Gossage, who still to this day causes controversy by just, speaking the truth and telling people exactly how he feels and not trying to... put any dressing on it. And they were great guests. We had some really great presentations, and like I said, we'll see fall out whether there will be a second national conference. I'm a little still woozy from the first one. As with anything, you kind of learn what works and kind of learn what doesn't. And I listen, when I did the first conference, first Stat 401k conference at Citi Field, it was it was a really important learning experience because you saw what worked and what didn't. And, there were a lot of things that first event didn't work and fixed it for the second event. And we constantly learn, we constantly look at what we have and see how we could better it. And so if there will be a second national event, I, kind of know what has to be done and how to fix that. So anyway, go to that 401ksite.com for further information on all the events. Now, today's episode, the one with the turd in the punch bowl, the Retireaholics were at that 401k conference, that 401k National Conference, and we recorded an episode. We didn't film and we didn't tape because there is no more film and there is no more tape. But anyway, we recorded an episode. I think maybe by the time you hear this, you'll see it. And, it's a really funny show. I think J.D. Carlson and his crew have, one of those things where I wish I came up with it. I just think it's fantastic. I think that it's not for everybody. I love it. I think that it's great and really, really interesting. And it was great to be a guest on it. And one thing that J.D. said, he said, well, that I was some sort of pessimist in this business. And I didn't take offense to it, but I said, I'm not a pessimist. I'm more like the turd in the punch bowl. And everybody got a good laugh about it. And the turd in the punch bowl, the reason I reference myself that is, uh, a few years back, Howard Stern was interviewing Harry Shearer, and Harry Shearer is this great impressionist comedian. He was excellent in, he was excellent Saturday Night Live for the couple of years that he was on. This is Spinal Tap. He was on um, in some of the other Christopher Guest movies. He always plays a part in it, and most importantly, he's known as the voice, many voices of The Simpsons. Skinner, Principal Skinner, and a whole bunch, the Reverend Lovejoy, and a whole host of others. And Howard asked, Harry, if, the thing is that, is he, that Harry's known as the turd in the punch bowl, in the sense that he's the guy who kind of rubs people the wrong way and kind of ruffles people's feathers. And Harry at one point was taken off the show, off The Simpsons, because he was demanding too much money. And he, I don't necessarily say he doesn't get along with people, but he's not afraid to speak up, and when you speak up, it kind of rubs people the wrong way. And he was known for that on Saturday Night Live. Two times he was fired from Saturday Night Live. First time he was on the 79-80 season, which is the last year of the original cast. And then he was there on the 84-85? No, it was the 84-85 season with Billy Crystal, Martin Short, and whatnot. And I think he left before the season was over, after he got in a fight with Dick Ebersol, who was producing the show at the time. So I said, I'm the turd in the punch bowl, and I use that phrase, this lovely phrase, to describe myself, because there are a lot of people in this business who either have an opinion, don't want to state it, or just don't have an opinion. And I said, listen, I was the ERISA attorney for a producing TPA who thought revenue sharing was a bad idea, and who actually said that. And needless to say, that didn't make me very, very popular with the bosses that ran the place. I was the associate at the law firm who didn't like the billable hour. And it's not like I'm the guy who you can't get along with or who always complains at work. I just kind of have my opinion, and I speak up, and I'm kind of honest about it. And the problem with that is honesty and transparency, bothers people. I know my limits, and I'm not Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm, where I'm just talking away and just defending everybody left and right. But I have these opinions, and and I'm not afraid to speak out about it. And it probably costs me some gigs speaking at some of these national events, and probably the reason why I started events of my own. But the fact of the matter is that we have an industry who I'm not a pessimist of this industry. The 401k plan industry is much better off now than it was 20 years ago. I'm sure there are quite a few TPAs who don't think so, because the fees were a lot higher back then. Technology didn't take didn't have the level that it does have now, and there was no transparency. But I think that when you look overall as an industry, I think we're better off. I think that fee transparency was the best thing that ever happened to this business. Created better competition. I think we have plan sponsors that are better educated on fiduciary issues that they weren't 20 years ago. I don't think 20 years ago a handful of plan sponsors knew what an IPS was. I think that education, I think the technology has really helped this industry out. And so, my further hope is that the industry will grow, that the industry will improve. And I think that people, whether it's here or, anywhere else, people are threatened by change. And change is good. Change for the sake of change isn't necessarily good. But being open to change and changing with the times, that's really a good thing. What we could do in this business, 1999, we can't do today. And there's no, going back. Fee disclosure's here. Competition's here. The technology's here. As much as trustee-directed plans for 401ks are a better idea, we're never going to go down that path again. This is this is the way it is. And listen, I'm not afraid to express my opinion, and it offends people for every now and then. But you know, it allowed me to stand out in this business. Being again attorney for a TPA, it's a different experience than if I only started in a law firm. I kind of have that nuts and bolts attitude in terms of plan administration. I know when things get messed up and why. I always tell a story about training and how training is a big deal. And you know, when I took an LLM course on 401k plans and ERISA and whatnot, the book just tells you what the law should be, what the plan should operate, and should operate to the law. But that's not practical because that's not how plan administration works. Mistakes happen left and right. I always talk about the story again with the administrator who in 2007 was trying to tell me that the vesting schedule for the matching contributions was 7-year graded. The only problem was we got rid of 7-year grading in 2002, yet he was still administering the plan as if the law had not changed. An attorney who never worked in a TPA would not understand why that happened, and I do. I knew why that happened because obviously he got no training when it was extra time. So for the last 5 years, he was probably doing it incorrectly for all of his plans. And, that's how it is. But again, JD was talking about, he really, I think I'm well known for the payroll provider TPA articles, which I do every year, and how they use that, maybe once a week to help save business and to help generate business. And as I was saying, a lot of other risk attorneys, and their names, they're not going to express an opinion on how bad payroll provider TPAs are, and it's quite possibly they represent these payroll provider TPAs. I don't. I spoke up and said what I had to say, and as a result, ADP and Paychex isn't going to refer me business, but that's the price you pay for being outspoken. When I was at law school, I was the editor-in-chief of the law school magazine, and I was presented a story that one of the law journals, the leadership there didn't complete their requisite hours in order to get credit. And they had these timesheets that showed that they were, half filled, and there was no explanation for it. And I broke the story, and, threats were made against me, and my sources were threatened, and the story broke, and I think the story was very, very well done. But the fact of the matter is that, you don't make many friends by being upfront and honest. But that's the only way I know how to be. Being that turd in the punch bowl, telling people how I feel. When I gave the Secure Act presentation, did a Secure Act presentation using elements of the show Seinfeld. I don't pull any punches, and I was just saying that annuities that they want to bring back to 401k plans as part of the Secure Act, I think they're a bad idea. My 2 cents were always if we allow annuities back into 401k plans, the insurance salespeople and the insurance companies are just going to try to find their way back in, sell high commission annuity products that will confuse plan participants. I mean, I understand we have a retirement plan crisis and lifetime income is a big deal. But my concern is, you kind of want to keep these commission-based people out of the plan. I mean, that's just my 2 cents. And if I offend people, I offend people. But that's just my opinion, and my opinion really shouldn't offend people. But of course, that's not the reality. Many years ago, I wrote an article about fiduciary warranties and how they were worthless. And they really were. I just think that, to me it was a marketing ploy. I felt that they were confusing, and I don't know if you guys remember, but a fiduciary warranty essentially was, insurance company A would present a fiduciary warranty to plan sponsors and say that if you pick a fund lineup of the available funds on the platform, that they would, the insurance company A would defend you as a plan sponsor against a fiduciary breach concerning the prudent investment requirement for an ERISA 404C plan. Notice that it was the prudent requirement, which is, selecting 3 funds. And I can never recall when a plan sponsor ever was sued on the prudence of having a broad scope of funds available on a 404C plan. It doesn't happen. The reason it doesn't happen is because every advisor puts on funds that, meet that requirement. And quite honestly, most advisors put too many funds on the 401k platform, but that's a whole nother story. So I said, listen, a fiduciary warranty that warranties that a plan sponsor isn't going to violate, this broad investment class lineup deal of ERISA 404C is the same deal as insurance policy that only pays you on death by a lightning strike. It's never going to really happen. But it's not true. Lightning strikes are going to happen, and unless a plan sponsor somehow only had a stable value fund, they're going to fulfill that broad investment requirement under ERISA 404C. So I said my piece. I've written that article a couple times, constantly updating and whatnot. And I remember I got an email from the local insurance company A guy who said to me, you know what, I was going to refer you work, and I saw this article, and I just really can't refer you work. Of course, this salesperson never referred me any work, and he never was going to refer me work, but he felt the need to tell me that. And again, this is the price you pay for being, expressive, as they say. And there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you realize that there's a price to pay for being opinionated. And, if it rubs people the wrong way, it rubs people the wrong way. But at least, I don't, people know where I stand. And many years ago when I was at that pseudo prestigious law firm on Long Island, Myers Swazi, I was contacted by an advisor who had seen the 1 or 2 articles that I wrote over there from California. And he reached out to me, and then he reached out to one of these well-known ERISA attorneys. I mean, you know this person. You know this guy. And so anyway, he wanted to, it was between me, a lowly associate at this Fakakta law firm, or this really well-known ERISA attorney. And this advisor who dabbled in index funds only, which was unheard of back in the day, he hired me only because the other ERISA attorney was busy with a meeting with one of these insurance companies. So this index fund advisor said, well, if this attorney, my competing attorney, is going to be talking to one of the insurance companies, then this isn't somebody I want to work with. But, quite honestly, those ERISA attorneys who work for, TPA plan providers or plan providers that charge a lot of fees, it's a living, and it's a living that they want to partake in, and I respect them, and I'm sure they make a lot more money than I do, but at least, I have my 2 cents, and I use that pulpit to advocate for change and push for it. And, people listen. They still listen. The 40 or 50 that actually listen to this podcast still listen. And I think what you need to realize is that, being outspoken and being responsible, there's a price to pay for it. It's not all shits and giggles, as they want to say. There is, like I said, when you look at the national conferences, it's the same 2 or 3 ERISA attorneys. It's never me in the equation. Is it because I'm opinionated? Probably. I ruffle people, like I said, I ruffle certain people the wrong way. My favorite story, one of my favorite movies of all time is Caddyshack. And when I worked at that law firm, Myers Swazi, Lois was the managing attorney. And I always felt like the Rodney Dangerfield character, in Caddyshack. And that Lois was Judge Smales. Whatever I do, she just did not like me for some reason. And, People just don't belong to Bushwood. Some people just some people just aren't Bushwood type. And I always felt that she felt like I wasn't really that type for that law firm. I don't know what she was looking for, but listen, we look at it 10 years later. I'm where I am, where I just had a national conference, and that law firm is half the size that it used to be. So maybe I am Al Chervik, and well, maybe I don't belong to Bushwood. I could have my own golf club, but the fact of the matter is that I will continue to be that turd in the punch bowl and tell people how I feel. So, and rub people the wrong way if I have to. I mean, one way I rub people the wrong way is anytime. My favorite way of rubbing people the wrong way is sometimes when I first started out, I did a lot of networking, and it was like a lot of small, organization networking. You'd meet at the local Panera Bread, and you'd meet some people. And I would rub people the wrong way when it was an insurance person who would call me up and wanted to set up a meeting with me. And I kind of try to avoid them because I just found that all of them just wanted to sell me something. And I think it started out when I was at Myers Swazi, and I went to this networking event, and I met this insurance salesperson, and she brought me in to meet her superior insurance salesperson, and they're just interviewing me about a whole life policy. And I already had a whole life policy. So I said, well, you're not introducing me to people. All you do is, selling me a policy. And I just, said, forget it. And I remember one time, probably a year or so after, an insurance salesperson said he got my name from somebody I've never heard of and wanted to meet with me. And I said, no. I said, I don't see really any way that we can do business. Maybe I was being a jerk, but the fact of the matter is that I had so many meetings at that period in time where people just wanted to sell me something. And I think the whole purpose of networking is seeing and meeting and talking and seeing, where you could refer business to and all that kind of stuff. And I just think it's kind of hokey that when you're first meeting somebody, the first thing out of your mouth is, oh, so can I sell you something? They don't go up that up front, but it kind of like is. I just got a LinkedIn message from a small insurance agent somewhere in the city, and right off the bat, oh, can we have a phone call? A phone call about what? Not even a phone call. Hi, I'd like to hear what you do. Not that. It's just a phone call, and it's like I kind of see through it, and it's bad. But I don't deal that way with an RIA, because or even a stockbroker, and sometimes even other brokers. Sometimes I just not too long ago I got an email from somebody when talking about one of the future events, and he was interested and he wanted to talk to me, and then of course he's talking to me. Oh, by the way, I have license in New York, whatever. I'm like, okay, great. I'm just not interested in being sold anything. Just like I'm not interested in selling anything. I don't go up to somebody and say, oh, by the way, who's your risk attorney? People know what I do. When you network, as long as people know what you do, and if they think highly of you and they respect you and you build this level of trust, they're going to refer you business. Just being, really too obnoxious and too forward, it's kind of like dating. I think you got to take it slowly and let it play out, rather than just being forward and just being right in their face and just trying to sell. Relationships and networking isn't about one sale; it's about multiple sales. And if you just treat it as that one sale, you're going to burn these potential referrers of business out. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode of that Turd in the Punch Bowl. I don't know if I'm going to trademark that, or probably can't. But anyway, just notice that in this industry, having an opinion, expressing it, can rub people the wrong way. You may not be able to be invited to that many conferences anymore. But, you could be like me and start your own. So, again, check out that forumksite.com for further information about all the events. And hope you join me next week. Thanks. Bye.